Hi everyone, I'm Karen Van Holten, President of Monarch Title of Texas. One of the favorite things that I get to do in my job and my team gets to do is close the transactions at our closing table. You don't do that every day, so you may have questions about the paperwork that you might be signing at closing or that you will be signing at closing. So I'm here to help you today with the seller's closing disclosure. I'm going to go over the seller's disclosure with you. Sometimes it's hard to say seller's closing disclosure really fast. I'm going to go over it with you line by line so that you can understand what you're looking at. Now, yours will be different, of course, because they're all a little bit different. So we're going to take it in sections. The very first page is kind of like a balance sheet. It has the sales price on it. It has any credits or debits that may be applied. And so we're just going to talk about it from beginning. I'm looking down because I have one in front of me and I want to make sure I go through it with you just like I would in closing. The sales price of your property is the first thing that you're going to see. So that is something that to you, the seller, is a credit to you. We're going to credit the sales price. The next thing that we might credit to you is anything that you have prepaid and now the buyer is going to be paying you back for the amounts that you prepaid. For example, maybe you've already paid your annual dues for your HOA. Well, now the buyer is moving in, so for the rest of the year, they will provide you with a credit for the remainder of the year for those annual dues because you already paid them. Maybe you already paid the taxes. Maybe we're closing at the end of the year and you already sent the payment in or your mortgage company already sent your payment in. So now the buyer is going to be paying you for the rest of the days of the year. That is all going to be listed up there for you. The next section, I'd give you all the money listed in the credits, but we have to pay the bills. So that is the next section. It's going to tell you what the total amount of the closing costs were, which are provided in sections or pages 2A and 2B. So we'll go over those in a second. And then it's going to also include any payoffs that you might have. If you have a current mortgage, if you have two current mortgages, if you have any liens against the property, or if you paid any repairmen, but you didn't pay them, you just wanted to pay them at closing. It may also include a credit that you've given to the buyer. Maybe you negotiated a credit and said, listen, buyer, I'm going to give you a credit instead of making any repairs, or that was just part of the contract. It's also going to include the return of the option fee. So in the beginning of the transaction, the buyer usually gives the seller an option fee so that they have some days to cancel without losing their earnest money. And it depends on the contract whether that's refundable or not. So if it is refundable, then you're going to see that as a credit to the buyer and a debit from you there. So a debit from you of the option money. The next thing you're going to see is your portion of the payment for the owner's title policy for the buyer if you agree to pay per that in the contract, which is typical. Most of the times the seller agrees to that, so it's there a lot. That's going to be there, and it's also going to be on page 2B. The way our system is set up, the lenders get to choose where the fees go. And in Texas, there is a different type of system than there is nationally. So in Texas, we break it up into two parts. So we're not charging you twice. It's just listed two different parts. So when you combine them, that's the total. You're also going to see in this section, let's say it is March and you haven't paid taxes yet for the current year because they're not due. So we might go ahead and collect the taxes that you're responsible for January 1st through whatever day you're closing in March. And that becomes a debit from you. And then we give that money to the buyer. So at the end of the year, the buyer is fully responsible for the entire year's worth of taxes. And then the bottom line number is the amount of money that we'll be giving to you after the loan has funded, which means that the lender has provided the funds and approval on all of our documents and the transaction is closed. That's the money that we'll be sending to you either by a wire or a check. It's your preference. So when you turn to the second page, you're going to see the meat of those closing costs. Typically, there's nothing there in section A and B for the seller most of the times. So you go on down to section C and you're going to see charges in there for our services. That's called a settlement fee. Maybe for the lender's review of some documents. That's not typical, but sometimes it's there. Or for a document preparation fee to an attorney to prepare the warranty deed. That's the document that you sign as the seller conveying and transferring the property to the buyer upon funding and closing. There's also a fee in there for the tax certificate. So you'll see that that's the document that we get that proves that you've paid the taxes or the taxes have been paid for the prior year and also what that amount was. We use that amount for the tax prorations. Then you might see also, you might have a fee in there for a survey if you agree to purchase a survey for the buyer. There's also going to be a $2 fee in there that shows that you had purchased a policy of title insurance. The Texas Department of Insurance requires that we charge $2 on every policy we issue. Then if you keep going down, you may see some recording fees. If there's any type of notice that you need to provide to the buyer, such as a notice of utility district or a notice of restrictions on the property, we will record that notice to show evidence that you actually provided the notice to the buyer. So we charge an electronic recording fee as well as the recording fee to the county. Then if you're going along with your closing disclosure, you're going to see in section H, that's where we put the commissions. That is the payment that you make to your real estate agent for all their hard work getting you to the closing table. So those are listed in section H. Also, if you agree to purchase a home warranty, that is the policy basically that covers appliances or things in the house for your buyer. If you agreed under the contract to provide that, then also in section H is where we're going to put that charge. So I think I've covered most of it. Oh, the HOA. Section H also includes the HOA. Sorry, I almost forgot because on the one that I'm looking at as my example, we didn't have an HOA. But that's very important. If you have any fees to the HOA, such as a transfer fee or a foundation fee, it's going to be included in section H. And that pretty much sums it up for the fees that you would see on the closing disclosure for a seller. But if you have any questions, we're happy to walk you through it in person when you come to closing, of course, on the phone. Any type of questions you may have, just give us a call. Monarch Title of Texas, 832-404-2795.